The diver had spent the past week swimming along the same stretch of the Antiguan coastline. It was a beautiful stretch, clear waters, perfect vacation brochure beaches, quiet atmosphere. It was the perfect place to relax, and maybe even to retire to, one day. And why not? He was older now, with the free time and resources to be able to do that. Maybe he would retire here completely, leave the USA behind once and for all. Maybe write a novel here. Be like that Fleming guy and write spy stories. Well, they did say write what you know about, didn't they? Richard Higgins had once been one of the CIA's shining stars. In fact, he had risen to the lofty heights of assistant to the deputy director of operations. He had been a cold warrior of the old school, a spy's spy, until the fall. To him, the fall was born out of duty and the desire to do the right thing. Some people, he was sure, viewed it as an act of revenge, and while many may have secretly sympathized with him, as professionals, they would have cast a disapproving eye. Richard Higgins lifted his body out of the warm water and looked around at the coastline. There was nothing for miles, only tranquility and peace. The only other neighbor was a small sailing boat bobbing about, anchored a mile away in the distance. It was seemingly empty. Should he go for another swim? Perhaps a bit further this time, maybe out toward the edge of the reef. Why not? Swimming was part of his daily exercise regime while he vacationed here. He jumped in the water again, feeling it swirl around his body, and began to swim away from the shore with powerful strokes. The fall had been forced upon him. The illegal operation that he had been part of had come unstuck. The sources blown, and the operation had come to the attention of the CIA. Higgins was left between a rock and a hard place. He had been called in and grilled by the interrogators from the agency's Office of Security. He had held out as long as he could, but it was a wasted effort. They already knew everything anyway. It was a clusterfuck. Then, while sitting in his interrogation room at the farm, the CIA's secure compound in Virginia, the door had opened and in had walked his erstwhile boss, the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence, Roy Webster. Webster was the second in command of the entire agency, answering only to the Director of Central Intelligence himself. He had hated Webster on sight. Higgins had been given a choice. Tell us what you know, and we let you retire gracefully and with full pension. Fuck us about, and you'll spend the rest of your life in the penitentiary. So, of course, he did as he was told. Really, he had no choice. His accomplices were dead, and the illegal operation was blown sky high. Better to retire with a few dollars to spend and try to rebuild his life post-agency than to fight for a losing cause. He signed the usual confidentiality agreement, stating that if he ever spoke out and embarrassed the CIA or the American government, he would be buried in the deepest and darkest hole they could find. So his life over the past 4 months had consisted of long walks, vacations, and very little else. But he was okay. He could adapt, eventually. He had made it out to the farthest part from the beach. Any further and he would be hitting the open ocean. For a man in his 60s, Higgins was wise enough to know his physical limitations, and he decided to turn back. Satisfied that for today, at least, his physical exercise was complete. Besides, it was nearly lunchtime, and all this exercise had made him ravenous. It was when he was halfway back that he suddenly felt a huge tug on his leg, causing him to be pulled beneath the waves. His first thought was shark attack, but even in the shock of the moment his mind was aware enough to know that there was no pain in his leg from a shark bite, no blood, nothing. It was as if he had been grabbed by a giant octopus. The shock of suddenly being pulled beneath the waves by this strong force made him gasp involuntarily, and, as a consequence, he pulled a large amount of water into his lungs. He started to panic, his arms flailing and his legs desperately trying to kick out as he was sucked down into the depths. But he couldn't kick out. Whatever it was that had him was incredibly strong, and was pulling him further and further down.